Morning, friends. Pastor Chuck Blair here. Welcome to New Church Lives, 10 minutes of morning calm. Like our content? It's funded by viewers like you. Please consider becoming a sustaining supporter of New Church Live today. And we do so appreciate, folks, all the support, and it makes a huge difference in what we try to do here. And today we're going to take a look at this idea of when we struggle and just some thoughts and observations on it. And this comes back to a podcast I was listening to, a fascinating podcast where a professor of mathematics from Oxford was talking about Christianity and suffering and sort of why he's a Christian and how that works in with his view of how he's come to see suffering in his life. And we all go through it. We all have struggles. And I thought there were some really interesting points that tie directly in with wonderful messages in the New Testament. And so the part of suffering I want to start with is that there clearly is some suffering that is pointless. It just is suffering. And there may not be a rhyme, a reason, a big picture, or anything like that. And to try to find one can become very dismissive of the person who's going through it. So that's one area I think we need to acknowledge. And today I'm talking about suffering that's really at a relational level. So when we suffer it because a relationship is not going the way we would like it to, or is not as robust as what we might want it to be. And what I'd like to share is just this basic idea that we suffer often because there is a greater truth at play. We suffer because often there is a greater truth at play. And there's a way in which when we look at it that way, that we can just breathe and be like, okay, so there's suffering here. And it may help us to keep our mindset from just being totally consumed on the suffering and getting into a little hamster wheel there where just we ruminate on the suffering, ruminate. It may help us to sort of back out of it a little bit, and in backing out of that suffering a little bit may in turn allow us to have a far healthier view of suffering, because maybe we come to see a bigger picture. Maybe we come to see, oh, I'm suffering, and the suffering here, what's the love that's being attacked? Well, it's this love that I feel is being attacked. It could be love of another person. That could be a love of a particular characteristic. That could be a love of something that is part of our basic sense of integrity and it's sort of the healthy kind of selfhood. It can be any number of things, but kind of backing it out of that seems to be helpful. And we see that a lot with Jesus. We see him kind of backing back out of things to really stay true to what the bigger truth is, and being willing to suffer because of that. And in a story I was thinking about, it's just a little one from the Bible, and it's part of the Easter story. Jesus is on trial, and he's being accused of all these awful things by the Roman authorities. Eventually gets acquitted of those charges, but gets executed on other charges. And he answers to the Roman governor at the time. And this is, again, in terms of political power, here's Jesus, and the Roman governor was like off the charts. I mean, this guy literally had the power of life and death at a whim. And the Roman governor offers Jesus this question, and Jesus then offers, don't you realize, like, if I wanted to, this is Jesus's words, I could call a legion of angels. In other words, it's a Roman term for I could call all my angels to come battle. But I'm not going to do that, because my kingdom is not of this world. There is something far greater. Now, if you know anything about the Easter story, there's a lot of suffering in there. And it's suffering because there was a greater truth. There was a greater truth in terms of Jesus saying, look, this idea of vengeance and hatred, all these things, they're going to stop here. I'm not going to allow the cycle to go on. And when you look at that, and you look at that idea that Jesus, representing God, and God with skin on, and here is God saying, like, no, this needs to end. This needs to be finished. This needs to be over, because we cannot continue to live like this. And I think most of us would well, first off, we'd agree with that, right? And if we're going to live with those greater truths, and this is sort of the hard part of spirituality, if we're going to live with those greater truths, we have to also be willing to live with suffering, because they're just going to be part of it. And folks, it's the same way. Like, we could look at that at the big global level. We want to live with bigger spiritual truths. We have to be willing to go, like, yeah, there's going to be suffering, because there's going to be the the world as it is and the world as we envision it might be. And that distance between the two is called suffering a lot of the time. And that's also true at the macro level. It's also true at the micro level. I mean, it's painful when relationships don't go the way we want to, and there is clear suffering, and some of the time that suffering may have been of our own making, and some of the time not. Some of the time it just is what happens with life, and people talk past each other, and there's just challenges. It could be any number of things, but important to keep on coming back to that basic idea of we suffer often because there is a greater truth at play. And weirdly, one of the surest signs that you love somebody, or that you love a child, or you love this, you love that, is simply the fact that sometimes the clearest marker of that love will be suffering, which is kind of interesting. And allow that to be, a golden finger that points to what you value the most. So that's the thought for today, friends, and I hope that makes sense. And again, it should be something that actually brings a little bit of a smile, maybe even a little bit of relief, as we really get clear. Oh yeah, there's something bigger here, and that something bigger sure is beautiful and sure appears to be incredibly, incredibly important. So, friends, that's the thought for today. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do our little meditation. With the meditation, we're going to do a little breath. We're going to do little prayer, a little blessing, and then a little bit of hello to folks on social media. So with that, friends, to get us started, I'd ask us all to just get a big breath. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Amen. All right, dear friends, let's get a little cheery hello to anybody who has joined us online. And again, I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend ahead of them. And isn't that interesting? It didn't show up there. Huh. All right. We just flip over to this. Okay, we did show up there. That's interesting. Okay. Let's say good morning, folks. Linda, good morning to you, and I hope you're doing well. Martha, good morning, and I hope you're having a wonderful day out there in Michigan. Teresa writes, to feel the joy of another is joy in oneself. To feel the suffering in another is suffering in oneself too. Yeah, it really is. And it's Teresa, it's fascinating, right? That the two really do somehow go together and hand in hand. And we want to live a life with no suffering. Doesn't seem to be in the cards though. Linda writes, prayers for my friend Amberly, who's nursing her daughter in recovery with a double mastectomy. She went through this herself 21 years ago. She's doing the physical work that a nurse should be doing. It's so hard to see her daughter suffer. Prayers for a full recovery for Britt. And yeah, definitely prayers there. And there's an example, right, Linda? Like there's a lot of suffering but I'm sure there's a great deal of love at the exact same time, in a way that's powerful. All right, let's see here. Okay. Yeah, we did broadcast over there. All right. Melissa, good morning to you, and I hope you're doing well, my friend. Happy Friday to you. Marcus, good morning to you. Good to see you joining us, buddy. And Gene, right, staying true to the higher picture is so important throughout life in this world. It's so true, Gene, and I just think a lot about, Lord, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Is that trying to stay true to the bigger picture, and it's not just a good idea, but it's a matter of survival. I get mystified. I don't see how anybody does this life without a sense of faith. And of course, I'm a pastor. What else would I say? But that's certainly what I have found to be very true, my friends. So big God bless to everyone out there. I'm just wishing you all the very best. May you have a wonderful day ahead of you, and we will see you next week. Take care. Bye bye.